Okay, guys, we are going to really quickly go through more of the notes, the heart notes. So I think I left off last time talking about the coronary veins and coronary arteries. Remember that the heart is made of muscle cells itself, and so it has to have oxygen in order to survive also. So if you look at the front of my heart model here, you can see all these veins and arteries here. These are the coronary veins and the coronary arteries that supply blood to the heart, okay? And I think I said I would show that to you. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here and we can go through some more notes. Okay, if you look here, it talks about heart conduction, and there is some innervation. There are some nerves that go to your heart that help um, signal for your heart to start beating, okay? Some of them are in the right atrium. This one is the sinoatrial node in the right atrium, and it's sometimes called like your natural pacemaker. So that's what keeps your heart beating at a regular beat, which, like I said, for a human is usually, or maybe I can't remember if I said or not, but an adult human is about 60 to 100 beats per minute, okay? So that pacemaker helps keep that on track. Sometimes people's natural pacemakers aren't working or whatever, and they can get like an artificial pacemaker put in. My grandfather had one. You could kind of see it. It's just like a little wire thing. I'm not sure how they work. It was kind of amazing. He would call like someplace in California to make sure it was working right. And I'm like, how can they receive those signals? It's kind of amazing. So you may know someone with the pacemaker. Let's see, that keeps it, and you can have a pacemaker put in if your heart rate's too slow or if your heart rate's too fast. It helps to keep it a regular beat. You can read through all this here. I want to talk a little bit about the cardiac cycle. You have a coronary circuit, which blood goes from the heart to your coronary arteries, taking blood to the heart itself. Pulmonary circuit, pulmonary, remember, refers to the lungs, okay? And then systemic circuit, systemic means going through to the entire body. Diastole and systole. This is, and I don't know if I can write on here, these are measurements that we take usually when we're talking about blood pressure. So diastole is when the atria and the ventricles are filling with blood and the heart is relaxed. And so that top, that bottom number, sorry, on your blood pressure is the pressure when this is happening, the pressures in your arteries when this is happening. Systole is when the heart is pumping, it's contracting, and so that top number is the number of systole. So you have systolic pressure over diastolic pressure, and so like a normal blood pressure is 120 over 80. Okay. Stroke volume is the amount of blood moved through the heart per beat, which is 80 milliliters usually. And remember, it's doing that 60 to 100 times a minute. Cardiac output, this is how much blood is moved by the heart in a minute, which is close to 5.6 liters, which is pretty amazing. If you think of 2-liter bottles, you know, that's 2.5 of those, almost 3. So your heart's moving some blood, it's doing some work there. The control of the heart can be modified by different influences. Hormones influence the beat of your heart. Your nervous system obviously controls everything. Chemicals can affect your heart rate. So here it talks about hormones, epinephrine, which is adrenaline that's secreted by your adrenal glands that sit above your kidneys. Adrenaline is going to increase your heart rate. And so that's a hormone, and it can happen in fight or flight or freeze responses. Okay, nervous system, you've got all kinds of nerves going into your heart also. And did it talk? Sorry, I'm kind of scrolling up in here. I thought maybe it talked about chemicals somewhere. affecting your heart rate. Maybe that's down a little bit. Receptors. Here's kind of talking about some nerves. You can read through that there. Here's chemical influences. So nicotine can affect your heart rate. Obviously, other chemicals, drugs are going to influence your heart rate. Caffeine is a drug. Caffeine can increase your heart rate, mess with your heart rate. So there are different drugs have different effects on your heart rate. Here, even your normal heart rate can vary depending on whether you're male or female or how old you are. Fetuses, so fetuses and young kids, fetuses have a really high heart rate, and even children's heart rates are much faster than like an adult heart rate. Okay. Electrocardiogram, this is an instrument that's going to measure if the heart's working, the electrical currents through the heart. When your heart beats, there are two sounds that ba-boom, 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 ba-boom. The first sound are the atrioventricular valves closing. So these are the valves between your atria and your ventricles. So your tricuspid and your bicuspid. The second sound, boom. The second sound is the semilunar valves, and semilunar valves are found both in the pulmonary artery and in the aorta. Okay. And let's look really quickly at heart disorders. There are things that are dangerous for your heart. Drug use, obesity, not working out, smoking cigarettes. I don't know, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say vaping's probably not very good for your heart. So if you do some of those things, this can increase your chances of heart disorders. There are also things that you can't control that can affect your heart rate too. If you lose blood to an area, it's called ischemia. It's lack of blood. And some tissues, if they die, it's an infarction. Okay, yeah, funny word. Fibrillation. So if the heart is in fibrillation, that means that it's not beating clearly, it's not organized, it's not boom, 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 it's not contracting in a normal rhythm. It's either kind of fluttering instead of contracting, or it could be beating really fast. It's not a normal rhythm. Tachycardia is a rapid heartbeat. So when this happens, if it's just fluttering, that means that you're not getting the blood pumped to the body that you need. And so you can use a defibrillator, which you guys have probably seen in the movies where they're like clear, and they put those things and they, the school does have an AED, an automated external defibrillator, which if someone is in fibrillation, you can get that AED and it will tell you step by step, it will shock them. I don't even think you have to push the button. I should know this because every teacher is trained on it, but I can't remember. But it'll say a shock is advised at this time. Like it'll read it, has electrodes, tells you where to put them, hook them up. And then it will shock or it won't shock. And this would happen if someone was not responding, or if, in an emergency situation, we would have to get that out. These are just pictures that kind of shows you here where the heart is sitting. Heart murmurs, you may know someone or have a heart murmur. These are usually caused by valve defects. So instead of getting that boom sound where those valves can really close off their chambers, they don't close them off all the way, and it's kind of, instead of that kind of sound, it's more of a whoosh, 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 whoosh. And your doctor, if they're listening to your heart, should be able to figure that out. You would have other symptoms, obviously. Atrial septal defect, so this would be in the when there's a hole, so a foramen, remember, if you remember, that means a hole, and blood can move between the atria for some reason. And so what happens when you have holes, and you can see the next one there is ventricle septal defect. So the septum that's dividing the right and left halves, here I got my model. The septum that divides them for some reason didn't close. And what can happen, why this is dangerous, is because then oxygenated blood and unoxygenated blood can mix together. And so this puts a strain on your lungs and your heart. So what could happen, remember that unoxygenated blood here enters through the superior vena cava into your right atrium, into your right ventricle, and then it has to go to the lungs to pick up oxygen through the pulmonary artery. But if there's a hole here or up here, this unoxygenated blood can get over into this left side. And so this left side, if you remember, the oxygenated blood comes back from the lungs and is dumped into the left atrium and goes down into the left ventricle. And then it's pumped through the aorta to the body. Well, it's getting some of this unoxygenated blood over here, and then it's pumping some of that unoxygenated blood to the body. And then the lungs keep having to reoxygenate all this blood, and it causes all kinds of problems. It talks here about fatigue. The person can be cyanotic, they can appear blue. And it's usually, sometimes these murmurs will heal on their own. Sometimes they have to be repaired by surgery. It just kind of depends. Okay. And then we're ready for blood vessels. So I'm going to stop here with this video, and we will continue blood vessels next time. See you later.